Dear students, the topic of today is the comparative account of alimentary canal in vertebrates. That too in three classes of vertebrates, it is Amphibia, Aves and Mammals. By taking one example from each class, that is frog, pigeon and rabbit respectively. I am Dr. Kumar, Assistant Professor of Zoology, Government First Grade College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Shira, Tumkur district. Yes, in this slide, you are seeing the images of three digestive systems belonging to the frog, the pigeon and the rabbit. The first and foremost, dear students, we need to know what is alimentary canal and the function of the alimentary canal. Basically, the alimentary canal is a scientific term commonly called as digestive system. Okay, as all of you know that the digestion. Okay, so digestion is a process of breakdown of large insoluble complex food molecules into a small water soluble simpler food substances, so that this converted food, when it enters into the intestine, it can be easily absorbed and ultimately derives energy for the living organisms. So today, since it is a comparative anatomy, you need to compare the digestive system of frog, pigeon and the rabbit. As we all know that digestive system or the alimentary canal is a long coiled tubule, starts from mouth and ends with the cloaca or the anus. Okay, in between there are several parts. Okay, mouth leads to the oral cavity or the buccal cavity. The buccal cavity leads to the pharynx, and the pharynx leads to a small muscular tubule called as esophagus. Esophagus leads to the stomach, and stomach leads to the intestine, which involves both the small and large intestine. Ultimately, it opens outside by means of rectum or the cloaca and the anus. With this brief introduction, let us pass on to giving comparative account in all these three. As it is a comparative anatomy, you need to give or you need to compare these the parts by taking each character and giving a comparative account in all these three. The first point is the major parts of alimentary canal. So I have given here in the table form. So in frog, in a pigeon and also in a rabbit, in all these three, it starts from the buccal cavity and ends in the cloaca or the anus. In between, you can see the pharynx, esophagus, stomach, intestine and ends with the anus. The second point, you need to explain each part in the digestive system in all these three. The first point is the mouth. The mouth is, as all of you know, that the terminal. It is in frog, it is terminal. It is present along anterior end of the head. So it is quite large, semicircular, bounded by the jaws, upper and the lower jaws. In case of Aves also, Aves are modified and truly adopted for the flight. Okay, as far as the digestive tract or the oral cavity is concerned, so here the jaws are usually modified into beak. Okay, so since it is mouth, it is present at the terminal end, guarded by V-shaped slit bounded by horny beaks. In case of rabbit, it is subterminal, present at the terminal end. It is small transverse slit bounded by the upper and lower jaws. The next point is the jaws and the lips. In case of frog, the lower jaw is movable, lips are hard and immovable. Here I wanted to draw your attention, students. So in case of organisms, especially in higher organisms, the lower jaw is movable, and upper jaw is fixed. So that with the help of lower jaw, the animals can able to close and open the oral cavity. Okay, with the help of lower jaw only, the animal can able to move up and down so that the oral cavity will open and close. So in this way, in frog, the lower jaw is movable, the lips are hard and immovable, present attached to the jaws, lips are immovable. In case of pigeon, jaws are modified into horny sheath or the beaks. In rabbit, the lower jaw and lips are movable. So in frog, lips are immovable. Both the lips are immovable, but here in case of rabbit, lower jaw and lips are movable. Both the lower jaw is movable in order to close and open the mouth, and lips which are present in both the jaws, that is the upper jaw and the lower jaw, they are movable. The upper lip, especially the upper lip, which is present around the nostrils, so they bear a sensory hairs called as vibrissae. The next point is the teeth. As I told you, so the jaws are usually present, and these jaws, upper and lower jaws, usually they bear the teeth for the mastication of food during digestion. When the food enters into the oral cavity, usually the organisms, they grind the food with the help of the teeth. The teeth are, in case of a frog, the teeth are small, conical, homodont type of teeth are present. Similar type of teeth are present, and they are present attached only to the upper jaw. Only to the upper jaw. As I explained in the osteology classes in the frog skull, so there is a small bone in the skull called as vomer. Okay, so here in case of frog, the teeth are attached only to the upper jaw, that too the bone, which is what is called as the vomer, okay. So hence the teeth in case of frog is called as vomerine teeth. In case of the pigeon, teeth are completely absent, but the beaks are present. On either side of the beak, there is a hard teeth-like structures are present, so that the birds can able to hold the things firmly with the help of the beak. In mammals, to the rabbit, the teeth are of several types. Heterodont dentition, we refer this as heterodont dentition. So with different types of teeth, hetero means different. Okay. So here different means there are 4 different types of teeth are present, like incisors, canines, premolars, and molars, and they are present attached to the jaws by means of sockets. So such a type of teeth are called as thecodont type of teeth. Okay. So in case of rabbit, there are 2 sets of teeth that can be seen in the life of an rabbit. So that is the what is called as, scientifically it is designated as diphyodont dentition. That means it they are having 2 sets of teeth during their lifespan. The first set is the milk dentition, and the second is permanent dentition. And teeth are present in both the jaws, that is upper jaw as well as the lower jaw in case of rabbit. The next point is the diastema. Diastema is absent in case of frog as well as the pigeon. Diastema is a structure which is very much present in the jaws, so that too it is a toothless space which is very much present between the incisors and the premolars. There is a gap between the incisors and the premolars. Okay, so this gap in the jawbone is what is called as diastema. It is very much present in the rabbit, absent in case of that too in the lower jaw. In the lower jaw, there is a space between the incisors and the premolars. So this space is what is called as diastema, present only in case of rabbit, absent in frog and pigeon. The next is the buccal cavity or the oral cavity. So this is only the size and shape. It is quite large and wide. In case of pigeon, it is quite narrow, roughly triangular in shape. In case of rabbit, so it is quite large and it is spacious inside. The next is the tongue. Tongue, as all of you know, dear students, tongue plays a very important role during once the food enters into the oral cavity, and as far as the capturing of the food is concerned in the lower organisms. Okay, so tongue is, in case of frog, tongue is quite large, muscular and sticky. It is quite large, muscular, sticky. Anterior end is attached to the oral cavity, where the posterior end is free and it is bifid. Bifid means it is bifurcated. It splits into two parts at the terminal end, and it is highly protrusible and use it for capturing of an insect prey from a considerable distance. From a long distance, it can able to capture its prey due to the muscular, sticky tongue. So where it is covered with few taste buds also. In case of pigeon, the tongue is quite large, narrow, somewhat triangular and non-protrusible. So here also in birds also, the tongue is covered with taste buds. The large, in case of a rabbit, the tongue is quite large, muscular, attached mid-ventrally to the oral cavity, and grooved mid-dorsally. On the dorsal side, that too in the mid area, you can see a groove is present, and the anterior tip is free and posterior tip is usually attached, and it is rounded and protrusible, covered with the taste buds. So the taste buds are invariably present in all these three, and they are helpful in tasting the food material when it enters into the oral cavity. The next part in the alimentary canal is the pharynx. The pharynx is the buccal cavity. It is the buccal cavity passes without demarcation into a short area, what is called as the pharynx, having the vocal apparatus. In case of a pigeon, buccal cavity merges behind the pharyngeal cavity. Buccal cavity leads to a small chamber, what is called as the pharyngeal cavity in case of pigeon. And in rabbit, the pharynx is quite short, narrow. It is quite short, narrow area, and it is differentiated into three parts, that is nasopharynx, oropharynx and laryngopharynx. Okay, so there are three different parts are present in the pharynx area. So pharynx is differentiated into three parts as in case of rabbit, that is nasopharynx, oropharynx and laryngopharynx. Yes. The next is esophagus. As we all know that the esophagus, from the pharynx, a short muscular tubule which arises, what is called as a short wide muscular tube with longitudinal mucous folds and highly distensible. Okay. So as far as the esophagus is concerned, I wanted to draw your attention as far as the esophagus is concerned. Esophagus is a short narrow tubule, no doubt, but it is distensible. It is quite elastic. The inner lining of the esophagus is having the longitudinal mucous folds. The inner lining of the esophagus is having longitudinal mucous folds, and it is highly distensible, or it is quite flexible or elastic in nature. Yes, in case of the pigeon, the esophagus is long, wide, muscular thickened wall, and it is distensible. So as far as the esophagus is concerned, in case of the pigeon, it is differentiated into two different parts. Esophagus, two different parts. In the middle part of the esophagus, it forms a large bilobed elastic sac called as the crop or the food reservoir. So this can be seen here. I will show here. Here you can see the esophagus. In the middle of the esophagus, on either side you can see a bilobed enlarged portion, what is called as the crop. Usually the birds will store their food temporarily in the crop for some time. Okay, it is very much present in the esophagus. So that too, in the middle of the esophagus you can see a bilobed enlarged portion, what is called as the crop or the food reservoir. Right. In case of rabbit, the esophagus is long, narrow, muscular, elastic tube opening into the stomach. The same thing here. Here also it is a long, muscular, narrow tubule, elastic. The inner lining is having the longitudinal mucus folds. The next is stomach. Esophagus leads to the stomach. In case of a frog, stomach is large, broad, curved, muscular sac with anterior cardiac and posterior parts. This can be seen here. This is the image of a frog digestive system. So where you can see this is the esophagus. Esophagus leads to a large muscular bag, what is called as stomach. And this stomach invariably, in case of organisms, having two ends. One is the anterior end, which is connected to the esophagus, is what is called as the cardiac stomach, and the posterior end, which is connected to the intestine, is called as pyloric stomach. So this can be seen in frog. Okay, so a large muscular bag, okay, called as the stomach, having two ends, that is the cardiac end and the pyloric end. Right. So in Aves also there is a specialized structure, what is called as gizzard. What is called as gizzard. So in Aves, stomach is small and it is divided into two distinct parts. This is very important. You need to specify this as far as the Aves are concerned. So the stomach is divided into two distinct parts, that is the anterior and posterior part. The anterior narrow tube-like glandular proventriculus, anterior part, a narrow tubular proventriculus. Here you can see. So here from the crop you can see a anterior narrow tubular proventriculus, and the posterior bulged portion, a oval shaped posterior portion, is what is called as the gizzard. Okay, so it is having stomach. In case of Aves, it is divided into two distinct parts, that is the anterior and the posterior part. Anterior part is called as glandular narrow part, called as proventriculus, and the posterior broad muscular biconvex bulged portion, what is called as the gizzard. Okay, gizzard internally it is lined by thick horny epithelium, which is ultimately modified for grinding of hard food. Right. So this is very important. You need to specify this. Stomach in case of birds, it is divided into two distinct parts, that is the anterior glandular proventriculus and the posterior a broad muscular biconvex gizzard, and the inner lining of the gizzard is specialized, having lined with a thick horny epithelium for grinding of hard food. In rabbit, the stomach is large, bean-shaped, lying transversely on left side, distinguished into three regions, that is cardiac, fundic and pyloric stomach. Here you can see, as far as the rabbit is concerned, the esophagus leads to a large muscular bag, what is called as the stomach. Okay, so the stomach in case of rabbit is divided into three parts, that is the cardia, and the body of the stomach is called as fundic, and the posterior end of the stomach is what is called as pyloric stomach. Cardiac stomach, body of the stomach is called as fundic stomach, and the posterior end of the stomach is called as the pyloric stomach. Right. The next part in the digestive system is the intestine, important part. Intestine, it is quite a long coiled tubule, a narrow tubule differentiated into small and large intestine. It is present in all these three. It is a long coiled tubule, and usually small intestine is quite larger in size, in the sense it is quite lengthy. It is a small coiled tubule, so having length is more when compared to large intestine. Okay, it is present in all these three: small intestine and the large intestine. Small intestine ultimately connected to the large intestine, and large intestine opens outside by means of cloaca or the anus. Here you can see, this is the, in case of frog, the small intestine, a small tubule. This is the large intestine or the rectum. In case of pigeon also, the small intestine and the rectum, large intestine. So in rabbit also a small coiled tubule. This is the small intestine and this is the large intestine. Let us go one by one. The first one is the small intestine. Small intestine, as all of you know, the small intestine, so once it starts from the stomach, it is having three different parts. Okay, the first part of the small intestine is called as duodenum. The second part is called as the jejunum, and the third part is called as ileum. Okay, so this is very important. You all know all these things. So the small intestine is divided into three parts. That is, the first part of the small intestine is called as duodenum, the middle part is called as jejunum, and the last part is called as ileum. It is well marked in all these three. The first part is called as the duodenum. So in case of frog, the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine, it is what is called as it is straight tubule forming a U-shaped structure with the stomach, receives bile juice and the pancreatic juice through a common hepatopancreatic duct. Here you can see, so this is the pyloric stomach. From the pyloric stomach, the small intestine starts. The first part of the small intestine is called as the duodenum, so which runs parallel to the stomach in order to form the U-shaped structure. This can be seen here. Okay, so the first part of the small intestine in case of frog is called as the duodenum. Okay, this duodenum runs in parallel with the stomach in order to form a U-shaped structure, and in this part you can see the digestive glands. This is very important. You need to give a comparative account of digestive glands also. Digestive glands, so they play a very important role, because so digestive glands includes both the liver and the pancreas. Okay, liver and the pancreas are the important digestive glands. From the liver, the bile juice is secreted, and from the pancreas, the pancreatic juice is secreted. Okay, so from the liver, the bile duct or the gallbladder is very much present. From the gallbladder, there is a common bile duct, and from the pancreas, there is a pancreatic duct. Both of them, they open into the duodenum and pour their secretions. That is, both the bile juice as well as the pancreatic juice. So both the bile duct and the pancreatic duct, before they open into the duodenum, they unite to form a common duct, what is called as hepatopancreatic duct. Okay, so this is very important. You need to explain the digestive glands and their secretions. Are these secretions, that is the bile juice as well as the pancreatic juice, they are helpful, they are very helpful in the process of digestion. Right. In case of the Aves, that is the pigeon, duodenum, it is U-shaped tube receiving the bile duct and the pancreatic duct separately. This is very important. Here you can see they both the bile duct and the pancreatic duct, they are commonly they are fused. They are usually united in order to form a common duct called as hepatopancreatic duct before it opens into the duodenum. Whereas in case of Aves, both the bile duct and the pancreatic duct, they open to duodenum by means of a separate openings. Really, so here the liver, from the liver, so it opens to the duodenum by means of a separate duct, and from the pancreatic duct it opens to the duodenum by means of a separate duct. Okay, so they are not united to form a common hepatopancreatic duct. Right. In case of rabbit, it is quite distinct. U-shaped loop receiving the bile duct and the pancreatic duct. Here you can see in case of a rabbit, so it starts from here, small the tubule, it is U-shaped. So in this U-shaped structure, it will usually accommodates the pancreas. Okay, so the pancreas and the bile duct, gallbladder. From the gallbladder, there is a bile duct opens to duodenum, and in the same way, the pancreas from pancreatic duct also opens to the duodenum. Okay, both the secretions, that is the bile juice and the pancreatic juice, they are usually poured into the duodenum. Right. The next is the last part of the small intestine called as the ileum. Ileum is small and coiled. Ileum is small and coiled in case of frog, and in case of Aves, so it is quite long. Ileum is quite long and it is coiled. It is coiled. Okay, and in case of rabbit, it is extremely long and it is usually coiled. The next part or next point is the valves and the villi. Valves on the villi. So usually, as far as the digestion is concerned, digestive tract is concerned, a spiral valve is present in the intestine. A spiral valve is present in the intestine, so that it prevents the backward movement of food. The spiral valve, it prevents the food to move only in one direction due to the presence of a spiral valve. It is present in all these three. Okay. Apart from that, in the small intestine, you can come across the digestion and the absorption of food material. The absorption of the food material, invariably it takes place in the small intestine. In the small intestine. That too in the middle part of the small intestine, that is the jejunum, is having numerous finger-like projections. They are called as the villi. Villi usually absorb the digested food material and convey the digested food material into the blood through a simple diffusion. Right. In case of frog, the inner lining of the intestine forms several longitudinal folds. They help in absorption. Look at this. In frog, the villi are absent. So the villi are absent, but the role of absorption will be performed by the longitudinal folds which are present in the inner lining of the small intestine. Okay, they play the process of absorption. In case of Aves, the inner surface bears numerous small finger-like projections. They are called villi. They help in the absorption of digested food materials. In rabbit also, you can see numerous finger-like projections. They are called as the villi. They are very much present in the small intestine. They help in the absorption of digested food materials. Ultimately, these digested food materials, that includes the proteins, carbohydrates, and the lipids, are conveyed to the blood through a simple diffusion. And ultimately, in the body, these food materials, they derive energy for the living organisms. The next point is the vermiform appendix. Vermiform appendix. So this vermiform appendix is absent in frog and the pigeon. Whereas in case of rabbit, you can see a clear vermiform appendix that is very much present in between the small intestine and the large intestine. There is a spirally coiled structure called as cecum, and the cecum ends in a small tubular structure called as vermiform appendix. Can be seen here. This is the small intestine and this is the large intestine. Okay. In between the small intestine and the large intestine, there is a circular or coiled tubule-like structure, what is called as sacculus rotundus, or it is otherwise called as cecum. And this cecum ends with a small tubular portion, what is called as vermiform appendix, and this is present only in case of rabbit, absent in case of frog and the pigeon. The next point is the large intestine. The large intestine It is a short, broad rectum opening into the cloaca, as I told you. So from the small intestine, it is connected to a large chamber, what is called as the rectum. The rectum. Okay. So in case of the pigeon, also you can see a large cavity which is present at the end of the digestive tract, called as the large intestine or the rectum. Okay. So it is a short, broad rectum opening into the cloaca. So in pigeon also it forms a short but broad rectum which leads to cloaca. Whereas in case of mammals, it is very long. It is very long and forms an anterior colon and the posterior beaded rectum. Large intestine, in case of rabbit, it is divided into anterior part and the posterior part. The anterior part is quite flat in structure. Anterior part is what is called as the colon, and the posterior part is having beaded like structure. Okay, so having the undigested food material in the form of feeds, in the form of beads, what is called as beaded rectum. So it is quite lengthy in size. Okay, so anterior, it is divided into two parts, anterior colon and the posterior rectum. Right, the next part is the cloaca. Cloaca, it is rectum opens through anus into a cloaca, also containing urogenital aperture. Dear students, I wanted to draw your attention here. So in case of both the frog and pigeon, they open their digestive system into a chamber, what is called as cloacal chamber. Okay, whereas in the rabbit, the rabbit digestive system opens outside by means of a separate opening, what is called as the anus. There is a definite difference between the cloaca and the anus. Okay, anus is a separate opening of the digestive system which is present, opens to the outside, body outside, and it is meant for only digestive system. Okay, whereas in case of frog and pigeon, the digestive system opens to the cloaca by means of an anus. By means of one anus, it opens to a large cavity inside the body only, called as the cloacal chamber. And this is a common chamber for discharging of three different systems, that is the digestive system, reproductive system, and the excretory system. All these three systems, they pour their end products into a common chamber, what is called as the cloacal chamber. Can be seen in frog and pigeon, whereas a separate digestive system opening present in the body, what is called as the anus. This is the difference. The last point is the cloacal aperture. The cloacal aperture, cloaca opens outside between the hind limbs through a circular cloacal aperture. The cloacal chamber opens to the outside by means of a small opening called as cloacal aperture. In case of pigeon, also the same thing. Cloaca opens at the base of the tail, So here in between the hind limbs. So here there is no such the cloacal aperture, only the anus is present. Through the anus, usually the rabbit will throw undigested food material outside directly. Okay, there is no cloacal aperture. Yes, friends, dear students, so this completes the comparative account of alimentary canal in the frog, pigeon and the rabbit. Okay, so with this, the allotted syllabus for me is completed, and all the best for your forthcoming practical and theory examinations. Thank you.